Welcome everyone to the Saturday Anything Goes series, and I am so far behind on birthdays. It is just not funny. I don't know how I let this happen, but that prompted me for what we were going to do in today's session. I know we made a box a couple of weeks ago, but I thought we'd do a birthday one this time. If you're like me, you always need some kind of container to put little goodies in, whether it be a gift card or some note cards you may have printed up. But this definitely will serve serve that purpose, and you can always stick chocolate in there. It's great for that. Every time my husband sees me walk around with one of these, his eyes light up and he says, "Chocolate, chocolate." But for this one, empty right now, but I went ahead and made one up so you could see what it looks like. This is going to use our Cake Soiree beautiful designer series specialty paper. It's got lots and lots of silver foil in it, and it's really nice to use. It's sturdy, so for a box it works really good. So what I did was the framelit is actually from the Sure Do Love You bundle, and I'm using, let me put it down here so you can see it, but this is the box framelit. You will need to cut two and put them together to form your box. So I went ahead and, to save time, I cut one out of the beautiful designer series paper that you see here, and this will be the top of my box. And just to save on paper, and since no one really looks at the back, I went ahead and cut that out of Whisper White. Now when you die cut these out, it does put score lines in there for you, but I've always found it very helpful, especially with the thick designer series paper, to use your scoreboard to go in and reinforce those score lines to make them easy to fold over. And we'll use a strong adhesive, and in this case I'm using tape to put this together. That part's going to be pretty straightforward, so we'll save that for a few minutes. If I bring the box up a little closer, what we're going to start with is the tag that you see here. And I actually have two of them. I decided to do some glimmer paper and then to go ahead and stamp on Whisper White for my actual sentiment. Then I cut out some of these beautiful flowers using the Cake Soiree bundle thinlits, and one of them, they're cut out of silver, and one of them, this one right here, and let me move this out of the way so you can see better, is actually backed with some Whisper White that I colored in with powder pink. I have some powder pink cardstock, so I went ahead, or not powder pink, Blushing Bride, I went ahead and cut the backing for that out of the Blushing Bride cardstock. So that's what we're going to work on first. Now the glimmer paper, I didn't have the color that I wanted. So I went ahead and took some regular white, which you see right here, our Dazzling Diamonds paper, and I used my Berry Burst sponge dauber and Berry Burst ink to go ahead and color it in. And this is what I ended up with. Very, very pretty glimmer paper. So you can color your glimmer paper either using your stamping blends. I would always use the brush end and be very, very careful because you don't want to damage the brush on it. But in this case, I just used my sponge dauber. I've got lots of sponge daubers, so I figured if it did kind of tear up the foam a little bit, no big deal. I'd just use another one. But I had absolutely no trouble coloring this in. Hi, Sandy. Hi, Amy. Thanks for joining. So I've already done that. I've colored it in, and then I cut it out. And let me pull my dies out here so that you can see what I used. There is this lovely little tag die, and that's what I used to cut out both the colored glimmer paper and the Whisper White that we're going to be stamping on. So easy breezy. And then to cut out the rose outlines that you see here, there's another die out of that set which will do that for you. And if you go ahead and use this, it will cut out not only the outline but also the petals, so you end up with something that looks like this. And then I used another one of the dies, this one, to cut out a piece of Blushing Bride right here, which I will then use to back one of my florets. And it doesn't match perfectly, but no worries, because the bottom part of this is actually going to be hidden. So as long as we get most of it in there, we'll be just fine. And I'll be gluing that on the back with some good old Tombow multi-purpose glue. I found works really well for that. So those are the pieces that I used to get ready to assemble the box. Let's go ahead and get our stamping done first. So I'm going to move this out of the way. I'm going to pull in my Whisper White, and I'm also going to pull in a little bit of scratch paper just to make sure that I don't ink up something I don't want to. All right, and you can certainly stamp before you cut out. I just didn't want to drag my Big Shot all the way in this room and have you have to wait for me to cut it out. I think I can go ahead and line this up pretty easily. So I'm using the stamp from the cake Soiree that says Happy Birthday, and I have it mounted on a block. I'm going to ink it up using my Berry Burst ink. And I want to make sure that I have my stamp lined up on the block. So I'm going to ink it up, and then I'm going to go ahead and stamp it down just to see if it is indeed straight. It looks pretty much straight, so I'll need to angle my block a little bit to make sure I get it perfectly straight. But as you can see, it's pretty easy to tell if you have it on straight or not. All right, so I'm going to ink my block up really well. Give it one more test run here. And then I'm going to pull my tag down where I can see it, make sure that it's lined up straight. And I'm going to go ahead and just stamp right in the center. And I'm going to leave it sit on the paper for just 2 or 3 seconds to get the best impression possible. And there is it stamped out. I also wanted to pretty up the sentiment tag a little bit, so I took another of the stamps from the cake Soiree. This is the flower one, and I'm going to ink it up in Blushing Bride ink. So I'll just go ahead and ink it up and then decide where I want it. Now on this one, I stamped it over to the upper left and the bottom right. So I think I'm going to continue that on. So I've got one, and there's the second. Oops, as I pull up the tag with me. So that's all stamped. I also put in one of the little bud flower sections, if you look over here, and that I used Marina Mist for. So let me just pull out my Marina Mist here, give it a flip, and I just mounted it on the same block, just on the opposite side. So I'm going to ink it up. And I got a little too much on there, so let me just clean off the edges. Don't want to get it all smudgy. That's better. And then I'm going to stamp this off once, I think, and then stamp it just anywhere on there you like. So that just helps give some depth and color to the tag while not obscuring the sentiment. I'm pretty happy with that, so I'm going to put my inks aside because that is all the stamping that we need to do. Very, very easy. And now let's go ahead and start assembling all of this together. So I'll pull my tag out of the way, set it aside to make sure it dries. Put away my scratch paper, and I'm going to bring in my 2 pieces. I'm going to start with my Whisper White, and I'm just going to go ahead and fold on my score lines and burnish it with the bone folder. You want to be sure and do all the score lines, including your tag. When you're doing the tag, make sure you don't go over that score line beside it or it won't close well. So we'll just go ahead and fold that one as well. And then for the top, which is actually the bottom in this case, the lid, you have 2 score lines. You have one here, so we'll fold that, and then you have another just above it. All right, so we've got that all nice and folded and burnished. We'll move over to our DSP, and we're going to repeat the process. The DSP is thicker, so just use a little bit of care to make sure that everything is lining up straight. Give it a good burnish. Do the same on the other side. I'm just kind of coaxing it over, making sure it's straight, burnishing it. And again, with my flaps, making sure they don't cross over that line. Just like that. And this is indeed the top, so we'll go ahead and fold and burnish that, and then the tucker inner flap, I guess is what I call it. All right, so we have our 2 pieces, and they're going to kind of go together just like this. I fold in all these flaps here. This is basically what it's going to look like. So that's how you make your box. I like to tape the bottom part, so I'm going to go ahead and add tape to both of these side flaps. And you can certainly use fast fuse, you can use Tombow, just to make sure that you're using a pretty good weight of tape, especially if you're going to put anything with that has a lot of bulk or weight to it inside. I'm just going to tear that off, and then we'll do the same thing. There's room for 2 on here. Just make sure that it all lines up. And then I'm going to do the same on this side. You don't want to put any on your flaps. They need to be able to move freely. So it's just these side pieces that we're going to go ahead and put tape on. All right. And that's all the tape I needed, was just 4 strips. So I'm going to go ahead and I burnished the tape just to make sure that it's really pressing down and holding against the paper. Then I'll take and peel it off. Same on the other side. I can get my fingers in it here. All right. Now, we need a flap at the top and bottom. So this is the back side of our box. This is going to be the bottom. I want to make sure that the other flap is facing the opposite way. And I want to just go ahead and line these two up, making sure I'm not encroaching upon the flap so that it can fold over, and then I'm getting it right to the edge, just like that. And then again, I'm going to use my bone folder to give it a good press. And then I'm going to do the same over here. Just going to make sure that I line everything up. Second piece for me is always the hardest, but I think I've got it there. Making sure I go to the edge and pressing down really well. Matter of fact, I'm going to stick my bone folder in there and give it a good press. Now we can fold in our flaps, and if I have made sure that everything went together without encroaching upon those flaps, my box should close up just fine. Kind of looks pretty on the inside with that stripe. And there we go. So easy breezy, our box has gone together. Now we're going to go ahead and we're going to add our tag, our embellishments, and our bow. So I'm going to go ahead and take the colored glimmer paper and my stamped sentiment tag, put them together, and then I'm going to take a length of Berry Burst with the silver metallic edge ribbon that we have, pull it through, and I'm going to tie a bow. And we'll see how it goes live on camera. I always cheat and use a bow maker when I just need a little bow, but for this, because I want to attach these, I have to do it by hand. Now, I'm not pulling it really tight because I want to be able to move these. If you were to pull on this really tight, you might not be able to. And then I'm going to go ahead and attempt my bow here. Tighten it up just a little bit. This one didn't come out half bad. And there we go. There's my bow. And I still can move these, so that's good. The last thing here with my ribbon is I'm going to trim the tails. I like to leave them a little long, but I certainly don't want them hiding what my sentiment is saying. So, just like that. And then we're going to go ahead and attach them down. Now, I did not put any kind of adhesive on the white sentiment one. I did put adhesive on the glimmer paper tag to make sure that it doesn't flop around on the box. So I'm just going to add some good old Tombow. And I'm not taking it up to the very edge because I'm going to want to tuck those little flower embellishments that we cut out. So I'll decide where I want this, press it down, just hold it for a second and let it stick. With your Tombow, you have to give it an extra second to dry, but I find it's well worth it. Now I'm going to take my silver embellishments, and let me just move this out of the way to have some room, as well as my cutout that I did of Blushing Bride. And I'm going to attach this. See if I can line this up a little bit. So right there, I think. Yeah, let me see. Right there, maybe. It doesn't have to cover the whole thing, but I do want you to be able to see the Blushing Bride behind it. All right, And then to attach it, I'm going to, again, use some Tombow. And I've gotten pretty good at doing thin lines, so we'll see if I can do the same. I'm just going to concentrate down here on the center part. And that should give me enough hold. All right. And then, like I said, we'll go ahead and attach it and just hold it in place for a moment. Didn't get too much gunk everywhere, so I'll set that down to dry. And now I'm going to decide where I want these floral embellishments. And I had them pretty much right behind each other. So I had one of them up here at the top where the ribbon was. And then I had the other one sticking down below. Now the one behind the ribbon, I'm actually sticking behind the glimmer paper itself. But this one, I'm going to put between the white tag and the glimmer paper. Just like that. So I'm going to use just a little bit of Tombow on this one that goes behind the ribbon. And just stick it down in there. And then I'll put a little bit of Tombow on the back of this. Doesn't take a ton. And decide where I want that. I think that looks good right there. And just hold it down for a moment. Okay, the last thing that we need to do is to put our little hearts on. I did take and embellish this with 3 hearts. And the hearts come from our metallic shapes. And I didn't want to just leave them silver because there's a lot of silver already going on. So I took my Pink Pirouette Light Stamping Blend and used it to lightly color in 3 of the shapes. And it gives just a tiny, tiny hint of pink. And then I just need to go ahead and see if I can get these off. I don't have my pokey tool with me today because I packed up all my crafting supplies when we went down to Florida, and they're still in the car. But I think I can get underneath this. Boy, it is stuck to that good. And of course, since I got my nails done, nothing wants to work with that. All right, so I'm just going to apply 3 of them. I'll do one of them up here, right about there. And then we'll do another one. Let's see, let's put this one down here a bit. Right about there. And then I've got the one other one. And because I like doing it in odd numbers and in a triangle or semi-triangle, I'm actually going to put this one right on the white tag below my sentiment. And that is pretty much that. So there is our finished birthday box. And if you want, you certainly can glue in the bottom if it's not sticking in. Mine is sticking in pretty well. And then you've got the top section that you can open up and put all your goodies in. You can make a card to go with it as well using stamps from the Cake Soiree, or you can just let the sentiment tag serve as your birthday wishes. All right, so that's the project that I wanted to show you today. Are there any questions? Hi, Sally. Thanks for joining. All right. Well, if there are no questions, then I will go ahead and close out the video. If you joined late, no worries. I will have this up on YouTube later today, as well as on my blog, which is www.cardsbywynnie.wordpress.com. Thanks everyone for joining. I hope you have a great rest of the weekend. Bye-bye now.